I have a question for you today. Do you like doing things alone? I realize some people that are out there who like to do things alone. But how about this? Do you like doing hard things alone? Difficult things alone? If I handed you a really hard task and I said, do it, you will probably start looking around for who can help you, right? And that's just fine. That's perfectly understandable. We look for someone else to help us with a task that we find difficult, overwhelming, insurmountable. And this is exactly what in this parsha we have with Moshe. So in Exodus chapter 33, we're reading that Moshe is asking Hashem for help. And his question is, who is going to lead these people together with me? Because remember, the sin of the golden calf just happened. It's a really disastrous moment in the history of Israel. And right now, Moshe is burdened with the idea that he's going to have to lead the people all by himself. So he comes to Hashem and says, who will help me lead these people? Now, it's interesting that early in this chapter we just read this interesting scenario where we see the image of Moshe coming to speak to Hashem. He comes to the tent of meeting, he stands at the door, and the cloud of Hashem's presence descends, and actually the pillar of fire comes out of the cloud, and Hashem speaks to Moshe, and then Moshe steps away and goes and speaks to the people. And the whole time in this story, Joshua is sitting out there in the courtyard watching, and he never leaves. He just watches the cloud all the time, we're told. It's an interesting story, but it helps us to understand what kind of relationship there was between Moshe and Hashem. He always comes and goes, and then now he has to step away from his presence to lead the people of Israel. So he asked him this question, who is going to help me to lead these people? And Hashem answered to him, and he said, he might be expecting that it will be someone like Joshua, but Joshua is very young at this point. And so he said, I am going to help you lead the people. I myself am going to come with you, and I will lead these people. Now, when he received an answer like that, I'm sure he was very happy to hear this answer, because this was way better than he expected, than someone coming besides him. So in Exodus 33:14, we read these words. It says, Panai yilechu v'lechanichot ilach. My presence, he replied, will go with you, and I will grant you rest. I mean, it's a very little translation I'm doing right here. The presence here is panim. This is also translates from Hebrew, those of you who know, it means face. It means front. So God says, essentially, my very face, my very presence, the way we speak to each other all this time, I'm going to go with you. Now, I imagine that Moshe at that moment visualized that cloud, and he visualized that moment of speaking with Hashem. And you know, as I think about it, Hashem, what he promises him right here, he says, I'll go with you, and you will have rest. You will have that menucha. You will have that moment of rest. You see, as a leader, Moshe was very weary. He was very tired. He was worried about his own ability to lead the people of Israel, because what has just happened, this can happen again. They can once again show disrespect to Hashem, and they can once again bring a plague upon themselves, and he was afraid of that. He didn't want for that to happen. So when Hashem told him that he's going to help him himself, that changed everything. If your presence does not go with us, do not make us leave this place. What it really means to Moshe is that he found rest. He found comfort. He found his respite in the presence of the Lord. And he never wanted to leave it. He actually didn't want to go away from Hashem. Now, his job as a leader required that he would come speak to Hashem and then step away and then carry those words to the people. So he constantly had to go, speak to Hashem, and then leave and go away. But when that cloud descended, when he spoke to Hashem, panim el panim, face to face, at that moment is when I think Moshe felt that moment of rest and respite, a complete and total comfort, a sense of being one and not worrying about anything, not really being stressed with the burden of his task or the job that he had before him. You see, what began as a very paralyzing and scary experience of the burning bush has turned into a moment that he actually never wanted to end. Remember how Moshe feared when he approached the burning bush first? That is gone. Now that has been replaced with a sense of, I don't ever want to leave the presence of Hashem. Now I want to remind you of something. Do you remember when Yeshua, when he felt burdened and overwhelmed, when he felt like he needed some time, he would often go away up on the mountain to pray, just to be in Hashem's presence, just him and God. And most of the time he would go away by himself. Sometimes he would take people with him. Yeah, I believe he was seeking that same thing that Moshe was seeking. He was seeking that minucha, that rest, that comfort, that state of being in God's presence where nothing really bothers you, where you're completely unfazed by all the pressures that may be upon you at that moment. So this is what happened to Moshe. This is what Yeshua did. On this time, he once went up on top of the mountain, and he took with him Peter and James and John. Remember that story? And as he's up on that mountain, he's praying. All of a sudden, his face begins to glow, and all of a sudden, his garments turn white. And do you remember what Peter said? You know, Petros, the one that he decided to call Kepha, the rock. He said, "It is good for us to be here. If you wish, we'll build sukkahs, one for you, one for Moshe, one for Eliyahu," because all of a sudden, what they see is they see Moshe and Elijah appear right there and start speaking to Yeshua. And that's why the disciple says, if it's good, we're just going to build the sukkahs right here. Now imagine this moment. If you had Ushpizin like Eliyahu and Moshe show up to your domain, would you not want to build a personal, private Sukkot for them? Absolutely. And that's exactly what the disciple is suggesting. We're just going to build one for each one of you. That way you can stay here and we don't have to leave. We could just stay on top of this mountain however you want, long you want to. And so as they observe this moment of them speaking to Yeshua, they don't know what they were saying to him. We're not told the details of their conversation. But when that happens, all of a sudden the cloud appears. Remember that moment? That same cloud that we've been talking about, cloud of Hashem's presence. And as that cloud comes, a voice comes out of the cloud. And when that voice comes, well, the disciples do what all Jews have always done when they encounter God to such close proximity. They drop to the ground in fear and panic. And as they lift up their eyes, the voice is no longer heard, and it's just Yeshua standing there before them. So he says, "Come, let's go. Don't tell anybody what happened here. Not just yet. Not until a later time. You'll know when it's time." I wanted to connect this remarkable story of Yeshua on top of the mountain, speaking with Moses and Elijah, with his face glowing and a cloud coming down. The reason why, of course, you can understand, because that's what we see in the Parsha. This is how Moses interacted with Hashem. If you are right now, maybe in some way, maybe not exactly like Moses, but in some way looking at a challenging task, maybe something that is in front of you that you are not sure that you can do it. It's all right to ask for help. There are people around you who will help. It is perfectly normal. And don't forget, Hashem will be there for you as well. In case of Moshe, Hashem said that he will be the one who literally will help him lead Israel. Now, if you ever receive an answer like that from Hashem, that's the best news you can possibly hear. The divine presence accompanied the tribes as they went about in the wilderness. Now, in Yeshua's case, Moses and Elijah came to help. Did you realize? They didn't just show up, just to show up. He prayed, he asked for help, and Moses and Elijah came to help. Sometimes we need to lean on other people. They came to encourage him. And you know why he needed help? You know what task was before him? Because right after that mountain experience, he knew where he was going next. He meandered through all the different towns and made his way to Jerusalem. And this time he knew he was going to be arrested, and this time knew he was going to be put to death. That was a very dreadful path. and he needed strength to complete it. So who came to his aid? People who could understand. People who have been given some very difficult tasks in their life before. Hence, Moses and Elijah, because they understood the kind of burden that he was carrying. So, if you ask God for help, if you ask others for help, the cloud may not descend upon you as we read in the Torah. That may not happen. I don't want to disappoint you. You may not glow like Yeshua, but regardless of all the amazing things, Hashem will still be with you because you asked. His presence will be with you. As we spend the time together in temporary shelters this week, we remember, what do we remember? We remember the presence of Hashem. We remember that Exodus moment, right? That moment when we were the closest with Him. We had nothing. We had these little shabby shacks as we traveled around. Yet Hashem was right there with us, providing us everything we needed. It makes us aware of Hashem's presence. That's the point of dwelling in the Sukkot. Moshe did not walk alone. You do not walk alone. Even if you sit in your sukkah and you say the prayers by yourself, you're not alone. Neither one of us are alone. No matter how hard and intimidating the path may seem before us, no matter how difficult the tasks that you feel, ask for help. You're not alone in your joys. You're not alone in your sorrows. And never forget that if you need to be strong, if you need to lead others, you're actually following someone too. Because the whole time, Hashem is actually leading you. That's the strength of anyone who has to lead, is to realize you're not alone. I'm sure at some points Moshe felt that way, but he never was without alone. So my challenge to you today is find menucha, find your rest, find that respite in Hashem's presence, and receive the help you need. You may have to sit in your sukkah for a little while and to feel it, but that is what I can hope that you can do this season. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach.